When new all-time highs for good old Bitcoin is the topic of today as we look for something new to address in this market. We will go over the very, very short term for Bitcoin probably later on in this video as it's more or less the same, but we are starting to see that bounce emerge as Bitcoin does test almost 43,000 bucks in the early morning hours here. But first things first, let's get into the big topic of the day, which is when new all-time highs. So to do this, I want to first say that, as always, when we are talking about, these sort of things, this is like highly experimental, highly far out, but there are a few things to be aware of, and we can get a bit of a guideline in terms of the actual timing as to when this might be likely. So if we put on our drawing tools right here, we can witness that all of the prior green vertical bars have been halvings in Bitcoin's past, and we do have another one coming up in May of this year, sometime around like mid to late May, it looks like. Again, that's a bit of an estimation, but sometime around there, it does look like that will be happening. So in the past, from the halving to Bitcoin retesting the prior all-time high, there actually has been kind of some interesting data there. So we'll go to this first one over here. Again, keeping in mind that the green vertical bars represent those halving dates. And we can see that on this first one, Bitcoin took 98 days from the halving to not just retest, but actually make new all-time highs in this case. And that was certainly on the lower end. You could argue that, this one being on the lower end probably is representative of just, the overall immaturity of this market at the time. That was, 2013. So didn't really have as many people interested in it as of now. So things could, theoretically move easier as liquidity was lighter. And well, when liquidity is lighter, volatility is higher. And when volatility is higher, it cuts both ways, meaning that you get big ups and bigs downs. So in this case, about 100 days basically from the halving, we did see new all-time highs. Now compare that with what we did see in the next cycle in 2014 and 2015, where after the halving or, from the halving to Bitcoin printing a new high, and then actually playing out a pretty sizable retracement from there, was about 245 days. So that is actually very much consistent with what we see in the most recent cycle, 2018, 2019 right here, or I should probably say 2017, 2018. But again, that halving coming after the old black swan there, taking about 217 days. So very much comparable to the one beforehand. And if we were to kind of look at this as somewhat of a guide, somewhat of a judge, then we could extrapolate that to our current potential halving date, again, sometime around mid to late May, and say that, hey, on the lower end, which is extremely likely, maybe 100 days, which I do think that there's extremely low probability of happening, to put it lightly, but that would give us a date range basically around September of this year. If we would extrapolate again all the way out to a little bit over 200 days, let's say like 250 days, that would put it basically at the beginning of 2025. So January 2025, kind of in between there and December. So looking at that question and looking at history here, could it be that Bitcoin puts something within that date range, maybe even plays on the on the higher end scale of that? Yeah, I do think that is probably the, still like the long-term look on Bitcoin as the pattern continues to repeat, it does look like. Now, I do want to once again get into maybe some less harrowing stuff over here as well, in the sense that, again, I am still generally looking for an overall pullback on Bitcoin, despite the short-term bounce here. Again, we were looking for that short-term bounce, but that's really meaningless in the grand scheme of things as of right now. We'll go over like what that probably looks like for this week. It's, again, basically the same shit that we said last week, but if we go back on over here, I do want to now measure out the days from when Bitcoin broke its long-term parabolic downtrend in past cycles to the time that it printed the next major high, the highest price that we did see before the halving, again, that green vertical bar, which then produced a major correction. In all cases, been like 40% or more, actually. So in this first one, this one took about 252 days, again, from the breaking of that long-term downtrend to that next major high before the halving, and then produced immediately, in this particular case, doesn't look like much on the chart, but this is a humongous move. This is a 47% move almost, from top to bottom. Then we go on to the next one right on over here, and what do you know? Same thing. In fact, I have this wrong. I don't know why I had this wrong one earlier, but again, Bitcoin breaks a long-term downtrend, and what do you know? We do see that there is 245 days from that time to the next major high, again, before the halving, and proceeds from top to bottom, about 38.5% dump-ola party. This one should really be done on closures there, but it's my OCD is kicking in right there. Anyways, moving on to the next one, 2017, 2018, same thing. Long-term parabolic downtrend gets broken, and from that time to the next closing high, not the highest price, but the closing high, was 126 days. So that one was certainly on the lower end. Again, this one over here, probably a little bit weirder just because, you did have a bit of a black swan somewhere in between there. But ultimately, still gives us a bit of a date range here. We have 252 days, 245 days, and 126 days, basically. So, looking at all of this and putting that together, understanding that Bitcoin traded about that many days before the last major high before the halving, we can put this into context on our current trajectory and see that Bitcoin has been trading now for 350 days to the current high of this rally. And that would certainly be on the outlier scale of that. So I would say, again, this is still very much likely to pull back more over time. Keeping in mind that, I forgot to measure out this last one over here, but this one, again, a black swan, I wouldn't necessarily do it from top to bottom. I would do it on closures here. Still a very, very sizable move, 50% plus. So, again, putting that in context, not only have we kind of seen more days taken, but we've also seen not as great of a pullback, nearly not as great of a pullback as all of the other ones. As of right now, a little bit over 21% from top to bottom. Again, compare that with basically 50%, 39%, and 40-ish% over here. These are signal still long-term that while Bitcoin is in a bouncy mode and probably bounces more, as we'll go over soon, still long-term, probably has some more downside before it does find the next low. Again, just going off of history here, but to put this into context, if Bitcoin were to come down even 30% from the current high, that would put it at just below $34,000. If it were to play down closer to 40%, which is actually, realistically the sort of the average or closer to the average between those, that would put Bitcoin at around $29,000. So again, these next months coming up to the halving, and even maybe for like another month after the halving, I'd still be more skeptical of Bitcoin just kind of continuing from this current trajectory. It's a big topic of yesterday's video, actually, with Fiboswani. If you didn't check that one out, definitely check it out, because we do have a lot of confluence yet again. But as usual, he's ahead of me. And it's kind of funny. But he's just so damn good at the long term. So fucking good at the long term. One of the best, at least that I'm aware of. So check it out if you're interested in such things. And also, this would be a good time for me to say that if you do find this content valuable, then please do consider liking and subscribing. It helps out the channel. But yeah, back on topic here. My point is that, one, Bitcoin is still likely to put in new lows from this overall consolidation here. But two, within a year, it wouldn't be that crazy to say keeping in mind historicals, Bitcoin probably is somewhere around, the current, its current all-time high. So what sort of a picture am I painting? The picture that I'm painting is that you're probably going to get a very, very scary time in these upcoming months, sometime between now and like May. Probably going to get a very, very scary downside move. It's probably going to be quick as well, if I had to guess. But that is likely going to be the last major opportunity for the very high-term macro timeframes to get into one of those maybe long-term positions as Bitcoin gets more poised to carry out this cycle, closer towards its highs of $60,000. But in the meantime, you can just imagine what the headlines are going to be if Bitcoin were to come, especially down below $30,000. People are going to start to once again believe it's the biggest bull trap of all time, and maybe it is. But anyways, I want to go back onto the lower term timeframes, or the relatively lower term timeframes here. We were looking for a bounce on Bitcoin based off of the old bing and bong here, especially on the weekly. And in this case, Bitcoin actually in the early morning hours nearly getting towards $43,000. So the question is, does this rally have more on top of it in the very, very short term? Maybe. I mean, probably pulls back a little bit here in the short term. just seeing after a nice rally like that and kind of testing this region, it could very easily come back down, even at 40,000 bucks. But ultimately, I do think that the rally will continue into this week. I don't think that the rally is done necessarily. Still tentatively looking at this 2-day target the 2-day target's actually been hit. Okay. Then we go to the 5-day, and the 5-day target, the median on the HPDR bands is still hovering around just below 45,000 bucks actually, at 44,800 to be exact. So, does Bitcoin extend this rally somewhere closer to there, 44, maybe even 45,000 bucks in this next week? I do think that this would be the timing for that actually. But that is the perfect place if you are going to be bearish for a rejection. That is the absolute fucking perfect place. I still remain with my overall stance that as long as Bitcoin is below $46,000 on a closing basis, daily and above, downside is more likely overall from this general consolidation right here. If Bitcoin starts to close above 46,000 bucks, everything else that I'm talking about on, more prolonged pullback, I do think gets negated. I think that would be my I think it would be my invalidation for that. But for right now, still kind of the same thing as before, probably looking for a bounce up into here. And then maybe in like middle February, maybe late February, we start to see this one come down and then the real low. And I think that would be just, beautiful to see how these marks go because, of course they need to make everyone think that they're wrong, right? And as of right now, we've really only seen a couple weeks from the high. Just to put things into perspective, like it has not been long. It's not been long. Like I just think just from a timing perspective, it'd be very premature to be calling this the low. Not a low, but the low before Bitcoin just goes upwards and onwards for forever. Can that be wrong? Yes. Again, above 46,000 bucks. Okay, fucking fair enough. Game on. Bitcoin goes to 50,000 plus, but still remaining with the overall stance that, yeah, we do see overall lower. Again, I want to bring it into the equation, the monthly time frame right here. With just 3.5 days to go, basically, in the trading month, it is going to be very likely, not confirmed just yet, but very, very likely a rejection of the mean bound. So if Bitcoin really closed below, like especially 45,000 bucks on this monthly, yeah, okay, rejection, and very likely comes back down. Probably closer to the bottom side of the 50% range low. Doesn't necessarily have to get exactly there, but somewhere close to it. That should get marched up, but for right now, it actually is all the way down at 28,000 bucks. But I imagine it'll probably get marched up over the next couple months towards like 32,000 bucks. But yeah. When we're looking at the greater picture, I still do want to keep everything in context. That is why I've been trying to, put all of these different looks together because it's very easy to get carried away in the more near term. Again, for a rally that, we even were looking for, and I do think probably extends into this week, maybe after a little bit of a short-term pullback could easily come down to like 41 or even 40,000 bucks and not really mean all that much. So I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Monday.